Hi, and welcome to video 4 of 5 in my serve course. Thank you very much for watching today. I'm really excited to have you inside the course and learning along with everybody else as we continue going through and watching the pros and learning from how they do things in their service motions. Today we're going to be talking about contact, the point of contact on a good service motion, which is obviously really important. And I'm going to be going through and pointing out several key factors that differentiate the pros from recreational players. And along the way, I'm going to be dispelling several really common myths or misconceptions that even other pros I see have these things wrong, and it drives me crazy. And so I'm looking forward to meeting those things head on and showing you guys what the reality is. I mean, there's proof right here, what the reality is of what's going on in these service motions. Now, before we get to that, I wanted to respond quickly to a viewer comment from P&J in the previous video, number 3, which was about the racket drop. P&J wrote and said, "I was looking forward to this serve course, hoping it would be something I could do. But looking at the video, it seems the racket drop goes against my natural tendencies. The shoulder and arm back looks very unnatural, uncomfortable, unrelaxed, and painful to me. Also, the head leaning backwards with the back arched looks like if I tried it, I would be off balance and hurt myself." Okay, so P&J, I know you're not the only person thinking this. I'm 100% sure about that. In fact, other people left kind of similar comments. And I've tried to be clear as I go through and look at all the different elements of the pros and looking at them as examples. I've tried to be clear during the instructional parts of these videos that I do not expect people to copy all of these technique elements. It's just not practical or feasible, or it's just not going to happen realistically for most people, that they can duplicate these kinds of positions and these kinds of results, because we're not professional athletes. They're the professional athletes. And so I actually pointed out Djokovic in the racket drop video, saying, look at that flexibility, that's incredible. You know, even by pro standards, he's got awesome range of motion with his arm and shoulder. And, you know, truth be told, if you tried to copy that same range of motion, it probably would really hurt. You know, it would probably really hurt me too if I tried to get that same angle with my arm and shoulder. And I've tried to be clear as I go through and point out things where, you know, I'm trying to say, listen, this is where the pros are. If you can get to here, then you're doing a great job. Not to where the pros are, but, you know, most of the way there, you're doing great. And that might be really different from how you're doing things now, and it might feel very different, but that doesn't mean that it's unnatural or wrong. In fact, the pros, you know, what I'm showing here, what I'm showing them demonstrate is the most natural way to do it. It might not feel natural to you the first time you try it if you've done something really different your entire life up until now, but this is the most, you know, biologically correct or physiologically, you know, efficient or correct way to create an overhand motion, at least for tennis specific, you know, applications. If you go and watch a football quarterback or you watch a baseball pitcher, you will see the same elements. You will see the same dropping of the arm and shoulder and contact and release and pronation, which we're going to get to. You will see the same technical elements. So what I'm showing here are not unnatural ways to do it. They're the best possible ways to do it if you can duplicate those same positions and ranges of motion, etc. So P&J, don't be frustrated. If this is really different from what you do now, work at it, and I do not expect you to copy what I'm showing here, but hopefully, my hope for you and for everybody else is that you can bridge the gap between where you are now, and hopefully, as I mentioned in the last video, you've got some kind of video recording equipment so that you can see what you're actually doing. But my hope is that you can bridge the gap between what you're doing now and what we're showing here. And if you can make just small improvements from where you are now towards what I'm showing you guys in these videos, then you will see results. And I would be thrilled if that happens for you. So don't be frustrated that you can't do it like them. It's okay. That's kind of the point. That's why they're professional players. And I just hope you guys get a little bit in that direction, and that will help your results. Okay, so enough of that, but I just wanted to respond to that. P&J, thank you for your comments. And hopefully what I'm saying here makes sense. Feel free to leave more comments below if you'd like. So for right now, let's get right on to the contact point video. I'm really looking forward to getting into this video inside the course, which is going to focus on contact, because it's going to really dive into some big misconceptions that recreational tennis players have, and also talk about some of the main mistakes that tennis players have. And these are simple fixes, really. They're not super complicated, unlike some other parts of tennis swing mechanics. So it's going to be good stuff. We're going to talk about really 5 main issues having to do with contact. The first one is the extension of the arm and the shoulder. This has got to be in the top 2 or 3 mistakes that I've seen recreational tennis players make over the years at contact. A large percentage of recreational tennis players have a bend in their arm, and very often a bend at their elbow and also a bend at their wrist. And so they make contact in a much lower position than what professional players make, or high-level recreational tennis players make. And without exception, and I mean without exception, every professional tennis player makes contact with their arm, shoulder, and wrist in line and extended up towards the point of contact. Now, the angle of the racket will vary a little bit depending on what type of serve is being hit, but the arm and the shoulder and the hand and the wrist will all be straight and in line. So here's Ryan Harrison from behind taking a look at that. Next up we have Djokovic, same deal, straight line. And we have Andy Murray, straight line. Juan Martín del Potro, straight line. Maria Sharapova, straight line. And by the way, I really went out of my way to find video clips right at contact. It's not easy to do, even with a relatively high frame rate camera. You know, contact between the racket and the tennis ball only takes place across a couple 1,000ths of a second. So getting a video frame like this is really tough to do. But I made sure to do that for all of these examples so that you guys can see what's really happening right at contact. Okay, so that's the number one thing, similarity that I wanted to point out that's really, really important, is arm, shoulder, hand, and wrist extension. Nice, flat, and straight. As I've suggested many times in the videos within this serve course, if you can get a hold of video of yourself hitting serves, this is one of those things that you should be comparing to the pros, and it's one of those things that you should be trying to emulate for sure. Okay, now the next thing I want to talk about is a misconception not only among recreational players, but a lot of times among teaching professionals as well. Teaching pros tend to demonstrate contact with the arm and shoulder like this, nice and straight and high, and the racket nice and straight and high, but the shoulders much more level than this. And so they'll show a player with level shoulders, meaning parallel to the court surface, and the arm and shoulder at a much different angle, vertical, straight up towards the ball. So what I mean is the shoulder plane parallel to the court surface, and the arm and shoulder much more vertical. And what you'll see, almost without, well, really without exception, there's varying degrees to how much the pros are doing this, but you will see a very much a straight line. Look at the line of Harrison's shoulders here. They're almost totally parallel with the line of his arm and dominant shoulder. When I say his shoulders, I'm talking about the top edge of his core, essentially, where his neck meets his body. Across the top of his back is really very close to parallel with his arm and his shoulder as he extends up. And I've learned, to be honest with you, just pretty recently, that if your shoulders, and I'm talking about the top part of the core is parallel to the court surface, and your arm and shoulder are extending up much higher than that, you're really asking for injury of the shoulder area, so be careful of that. This extension should occur due to a tilt of the shoulders at contact and extending up towards contact. Very close to the same line as the arm and dominant shoulder. You know, see that here from Sharapova. See how her bottom shoulder is down here in a vertical line up across her shoulders. And then obviously the extension up of her arm and dominant shoulder. Here's Del Potro. You can see a line kind of up his chest, very close to parallel. This is really easiest seen from behind, but you can see this from the side as well. You can see his his non-dominant elbow, and there's just a vertical line going up towards contact. Here we have Murray. Not quite as parallel as Harrison, but you can very clearly see a very vertical tilt or slant here across his upper back, and then right up to his dominant shoulder, and then from there right up to the racket. And then Djokovic, very vertical. Check out his non-dominant elbow, and then up across the line of his shoulders here, and then up his dominant shoulder and up his arm towards the ball. Now, this occurs, this is segueing into my third point or focus point that I want to talk about. The first one was the extended arm and dominant shoulder. The second one was also how vertical really the whole upper body is up towards the point of contact. And this leads into kind of the reason or causality for this. And we talked about this in the previous video of this serve course. I talked about the cartwheel motion of the upper body, how the upper body lines up vertically. And in that cartwheel motion, the cartwheel is the non-dominant arm being replaced by the dominant arm. And that occurs when the upper body rotates vertically up towards the ball. So here we see Ryan Harrison's non-dominant arm high, dominant arm low. And then watch his chest as he rotates it up towards the ball. Here his chest is facing straight up towards the ball. And then that continues until contact, where now his non-dominant arm is very low and his dominant arm is very high. So this is the cartwheel motion of the upper body. So the two sides, the left side and the right side, are going end over end up towards the ball. We have a vertical alignment during the trophy pose, an upward rotation of the core, and then an upward extension and alignment up towards the point of contact with the back and shoulders up towards the ball. So this is why the top of the back or the shoulder plane back here is so vertical, is because there's actually been a rotation kind of around the axis here of Harrison's neck. If you can imagine a straight line going right down Harrison's upper body here, there's a circular rotation of his upper body occurring around that line, vertically up towards the ball. And I talked in a previous video about how vertically oriented a good serve actually is. And this is just another one of those reasons, or I guess causes, of why that is. The big upward rotation. So here, if we check out other players, very vertical alignment in the trophy pose, and then upwards rotation, chest facing up towards the ball, then the replacement of the non-dominant arm and the dominant arm. Now they're swapped. That's the cartwheel. So here we have high left arm and low left arm. So there's that end over end rotation up towards the ball. Next up, Murray. Vertical alignment up towards the ball. I pointed out in the previous video, Murray doesn't drop his dominant elbow quite as low, but he obviously still has a vertical setup up towards the ball. Then we see that chest facing up towards the ball as he rotates his core, and his dominant arm swaps with his non-dominant arm. That upward rotation of the core. There's Del Potro, a big guy, Del Potro. Man, does he transfer into the court? It's incredible. So very vertical alignment here of his non-dominant arm and shoulder, and also his chest vertically aligned upwards. Not the same angle as his non-dominant arm, but still vertical for sure. We have the chest rotating and facing up towards the ball, arms starting to cartwheel, and then here's contact with that dominant arm having replaced the dominant arm. And then lastly, Sharapova. Vertical alignment, chest facing up towards the ball, cartwheel, end over end. Now we have the non-dominant arm low and the dominant arm high. Okay, so that's really, really key, and that's a very important thing that the pros do to create this big upward acceleration. Now, so that's my third point. I've got two more focus points on the point of contact that I want to make, and the fourth one also has to do with how vertical tennis swings actually are when it comes to the serve and professional players. And we're going to focus now on what the feet are doing, or really the legs, the lower body as a whole, really. And we're going to take a look at how much of an upward push there is. And we're going to do a little experiment here. We're going to do a frame count. We're going to count how many frames take place between the point in time that Ryan Harrison's feet both leave the court and when he makes contact. And we're going to compare how many frames of video that is with how many frames of video there are between the point of contact and when his feet touch back down again. Okay, so we're going to kind of check out the ratio, basically see how he uses his air time and how he's using his body exactly. You'll see what I'm talking about. So let's check this out. So check out his feet. Here he's just, see here a little bit of light, he's just left the court. So this is frame number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 frames of video. So we could equate that into time if we wanted to, but 7 frames. Now we're going to see how many frames until he touches down again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, no, maybe 11. It looks like his heel is touched down here. So we have 7 frames on the front end up until contact and 11 frames on the second half. So it's mismatched. There's less frames on the front end before contact. What does that mean? That means that Harrison made contact while he was on the way up towards the ball. There were 18 frames total, 7 and 11. So even if he was just 50-50, right at the very peak of his push up with his legs and his, as a result, leaving the court up towards the ball, he would have made contact at frame number 9, but he actually makes contact on his way up at frame number 7. So that means he's actively moving upwards as he makes contact. All right, next up, here's Sharapova. Let's see where she's at. So watch her feet here, right there. She's left. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So she doesn't get quite as much air time as Harrison did before contact. Let's see about after. So 6 before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we have 6 on the front end and 12 on the back end. So very much so, she's making contact on her way up from the push of her legs. Next up is Del Potro. When he leaves is right here, both feet. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Same as Sharapova. And then on the back end, after contact, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8. 6 and 8. Which I find interesting. Obviously, Del Potro is a much bigger person than Sharapova is. But still, he's got the small end of frames on the front end. So he's making contact on his way up towards the ball. A little bit different ratio than Sharapova and Harrison. Here's Murray, leaving right here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at contact. And then from contact on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 6 and 10. And lastly, Djokovic, right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11. 7 and 11. Okay, so very clearly here, among all these different players, both WTA and ATP, we see the ratio of airtime smaller, the ratio is smaller of frames on the front side before contact as opposed to after contact. So again, that just demonstrates that these players are making contact while their body is extending upwards towards the ball. And again, I want to point this out just because it demonstrates how vertical the serve really is. They're making contact while they're actively still moving up towards the ball. And there's a big misconception among recreational players that a serve is kind of a jump serve in tennis. Kind of like in volleyball, where you toss the ball up, you jump in the air, and then you kind of make contact well after you've left the court. And that's not actually the case. And again, get a videotape of yourself. In my experience, the majority of recreational players, the ones that do leave the court because they use their legs well enough, their ratio is flip-flopped. Their number of frames is less after contact than it is before contact, which means they're making contact with the ball while their body is actually actively falling back towards the court again. And that is the opposite of what the pros are doing, and it's going to suck your ball down into the nets. It's just the exact opposite of what you should be doing as far as the timing of your leg drive is concerned. You should be timing your leg drive so that at the very least you're making contact at the very peak, all the way up at the very top of where you have left the court, if not on the front end, which all of these different pros are doing, as you can see. If you are currently, if you get the chance to look at video of yourself, if you're currently making contact with your feet already coming down on the back side, you know, the latter part of the frames where you're already coming down again, then that is working against you, because you should be focusing on upwards, and that would indicate that you are actually falling down towards the courts. Okay. The last part I want to talk about, having to do with contact points, is the angle of the racket. And this, I think, is the biggest misconception that recreational players have. Recreational players, in my experience, seem to think that at contact, the racket face should be closed, meaning that the strings are touching the top of the ball. And I've heard players give advice like, you know, snap your wrist and come over the ball, come over the top of the ball, etc. That is just not the case. And now we're going to look at some side angle views that really demonstrate it well. Here we see Harrison at contact, and from what we can tell from the back, the racket is square and hitting the back of the ball, not the top of the ball. But what I really want to look at is these couple of serves I found of professional players, video that I have where the frames are actually catching right at contact. I love this one because you can actually see the ball on the back side of the racket too. Look at Sharapova's racket. It is dead perpendicular to the court surface. If the racket were to be actually closed and facing down towards the court, even just a couple of degrees, the ball would definitely go into the net. Now, Sharapova is not short. How tall is she? I actually don't know off the top of my head. She's got to be around 6 foot, right? Maybe 6'1", probably at the most. Now, here's the one I really was interested in, though, is Del Potro. He's 6'6", and this guy gets incredible extension into the court. If we draw a line down from his racket to the court, and then, you know, kind of take an estimated measurement here from that point over to the baseline, he's probably making contact like 4 or 5 feet inside the court, which is incredible. You know, he's a really tall guy to begin with. He's got really good reach, and even with that height advantage, and even with getting so far into the court, you know, at 6'6", can pretty much promise that nobody watching this video is taller than him. And yet, look at his racket. Dead straight, dead perpendicular with the court surface. The ball is just touching the racket strings here in this frame. So just showing a flat racket face here again. There's Sharapova, Harrison. Whoops, accidentally. See if I can find my place here. Sorry about that. Here, I think this was the same serve that we were looking at previously. Yep, it is. So here's Djokovic's contact. Racket face perpendicular. We're seeing a little bit of angle on the strings here. That's because he's hitting more of a spin serve on this serve. He's hitting a little bit more of the right side of the ball, not a ton, but a little bit. But you can see that the angle of his racket face, his strings, is perpendicular to the court surface. It's straight up and down. And then the last example is Murray. Back view, so it's not quite as scientific to be able to see the actual angle of the racket, but you can see the ball here smushing into the racket strings, and it's absolutely the back of the ball. I will say that there is one exception to this, and this is something that we're not going to be discussing within this course, and that is on a kick serve, on a topspin serve, a heavy topspin serve. The racket face tends to be a little bit more closed by a couple of degrees. And that is because a kick serve is even more upward focused, even more vertically focused than a typical serve, a slice serve or a flat serve, or maybe a combination kind of topspin and slice serve, which the pros typically use for second serves. So it's a little bit different example, and they're able to close the racket face a little bit more on a kick serve because they're accelerating upwards vertically even so much more than normal, and that's what creates the topspin. A kick serve is a topspin serve, and so on a heavy topspin serve, you'll sometimes see the racket face a little bit more closed, but the vast majority of the time you will see a flat racket face at contact, and that's really, really important. Okay? So that concludes the contact point video within this serving course. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Again, the main parts are the straight extension of the dominant arm, shoulder, and wrist. No bends or hinges there. The arm, shoulder, and wrist all being vertically aligned, and that includes kind of the upper back / shoulder plane. And then number 3 was the upward rotation of the core. And that end-over-end cartwheel motion, the arms replacing each other. Number 4 was contact made on the way up. And we were able to demonstrate that by counting the number of frames in the video, before contact and after contact. And lastly is the flat racket face. It's not closed. We're not trying to hit the top of the ball. We are trying to make contact with the racket, touching the back of the ball. All right, so there you have it. Thank you so much for joining me today in video 4 of 5 in my serve course. I really appreciate your attention and your participation as you've continued to go through these videos, and I really hope that they've been helpful to you and they've really kind of shed some light on what the pros do to make their serves so effective. Of course, that's been my goal throughout this entire course. If you have any comments or questions about anything that you saw in today's video, please feel free to leave those right below this video player. I would really love to hear from you. And if you've enjoyed and appreciated these videos, please feel free to share the course with your friends and teammates. There is a Facebook, Twitter, and email button right below the video player as well. If you just click on those, they'll take you right to where you need to go, and they do everything for you. They plug in the link and text and everything. So just making it real easy for you guys to share the course. So thanks for watching, and keep an eye on your email inbox because video 5 of 5 is going to be coming out again in about a week from now or so. So look for that in your email. It's going to say serve course video number 5, and that video is going to focus on the follow through. So issues like wrist snap, which is another big misconception, or a term that has a lot of misconception around it that I'm going to really focus on. Also going to talk about pronation and other elements having to do with the follow through. So look for that. In the meantime, take care, and I'll be talking to you guys again soon.